podcast where business owners and their advisors get real practical insight on how to build a team of advisors, maximize value, and exit on their own terms. I'm your host, Bob Tankesley, author of Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price. You can find that book on Amazon. Just start typing in Exit Teams and it should be the first hit. And don't forget to check out our great content at exitteams.com. Whether you're years away from selling or thinking about an exit now, this episode is packed with must-know tips to help you take advantage of opportunities while avoiding costly mistakes. Today, I'm joined by an expert who manages companies through the pains of growth, Jane Gentry. For more than 25 years, Jane has focused on one pattern: companies built to run at 20 million, 30 million of gross revenue, and they're pushing toward 50, 75, and 100 million. But the operating model never really catches up. Jane's clients are CEOs in manufacturing, construction, logistics, and other operationally complex B2B businesses, typically 20 million to 250 million in revenue. And they all see the same signs. Decisions that used to take days now take weeks. The org chart no longer fits the work. EBITDA is thinning, and the key people are doing two jobs and starting to burn out. Before advising executives, Jane was one. She ran two private equity-owned companies, carried the P&L, and lived the reality of a board demanding growth while the operating model was already cracking, and of becoming the bottleneck for decisions that shouldn't need the CEO. Now Jane helps CEOs redesign their businesses so that they actually run, using structure, roles, and decision rights and operating rhythm while bringing their teams through the change with them. She knows the model doesn't just change because the slide says it should. She works with leaders to reset expectations and ways of working in a way people can absorb, so the organization gets faster and sharper without losing the talent they can't afford to lose. Jane is also a keynote speaker and a frequent podcast guest on the operational realities of scaling, known for her pattern recognition and willingness to name what's breaking before it becomes a crisis. Hey, Jane, welcome to the show. This should be a good one. Good conversation. I know the owners and executives of middle market companies are going to want to be listening closely.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bob. I'm tickled to be here. Thanks for that
Well,
lengthy and awesome intro.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, want to get it right. You've been doing a lot of good work for a lot of companies. Is there anything I missed in your background that you want to share with our audience?
No, I don't think so. Well, my
Okay.
first career was a professional actor, so
How
I don't know
about
if
that?
that I don't know if that informs if you believe me or not with what I'm talking about, but yeah, we'll take it we'll take it from there.
I have had guests on the show with either acting or broadcasting, news type in a news type environment before. They always make the best guests. They always come across the best. So let's start off here. Let's dive in. I noticed a lot of business owners often equate growth with success. You can't help them. The P&L is growing, the balance sheet's growing. Hey, we must be doing well. But work inside companies that are growing, they could be breaking at the same time. What does that actually look like? I mean, where do you start to see growth create problems instead of value?
Yeah, growth doesn't break all at once. It starts to break kind of in layers, right? Um, you hit $10 million, the founder makes every call. At $30 million, that's not sustainable anymore, right? There are 15 people outside the founder's door wanting the founder to make a call. So the first thing that we see go is really roles and responsibilities, a clarity around that. Um, the founders, the bottleneck, we start to see that that becomes more of a reality in the organization. The guy or the woman that used to be the one to help make things move is the one that's now holding the company up. And then third, I would say the thing that costs real money is a lack of management structure and processes, right? Ways that decisions get made in the organization.
Why do you think that is? Why do owners, even at the size of companies that you're dealing with, and we're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 million, why do they hold on? What makes them think, yeah, this system, the same system that got us here can get us to the next 25, 30,
Um,
50 million in revenue?
a couple things. One, I think it's a habit, right?
Yeah.
So it might be a lack of self-awareness that you're really doing that. Number two, it worked. It feels like, why fix what ain't broken? But it is broken, right? So if you think about it, um, growth is a revenue event. When we're growing, it looks like we're succeeding. We are succeeding at that metric. But scaling is an operating model event. So you could actually be growing from a revenue perspective and failing at an operating model perspective. And it's just part of the nature of growth in businesses. And I do see, unfortunately, a lot of businesses where the business is growing, but the leader is not growing with the business, if that makes sense. They're leading the same way at 50 million they led at 10 million. And that's just ultimately a recipe for disaster.
I get it. It hasn't, nothing's blown up yet that we know of.
That we know
It's,
of. That's the
yeah.
ticket, right? That we know of. Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right.
So, I mean, it sounds like the numbers look fine, but operationally underneath, things are starting to fracture. So I've been waiting to ask you this question. What are those early warning signs that a company is growing but not scaling? What should our listeners, if owners of, lower and middle market companies, they should really be leaning in right now.
So I
What should
ask
they?
three kind of initial questions. One, is your gross margin holding? So one of the symptoms of the operating model starting to crack is your revenue is up, but your margins are decreasing. So that's the first thing. The second thing I ask is, how are you doing at retaining your key leadership? Or are you seeing that you're seeing exhaustion, mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, your key leadership just working more hours than it really seems like they should be? And the third thing is, can you take a 2 week vacation without your company falling apart?
I thought you were going to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you think about it, that's an attribute of what I call a practice, not a business. So if you think about it,
Ooh.
we have a practice. At
You
the
and I.
moment
If
when
if we if we leave, the work stops. I get it.
if we leave, we're done, right? There is, we have some IP and whatever, but there's not enough of it to really say we have a company. We have a practice. And so for us, without us, the business doesn't have a lot of legs. But if you think you have a company and you can't go on a 2 week vacation and turn your phone off, then that's a leadership problem. It's a good indication that you're the bottleneck in your business.
It's almost like you'd want to try to strategize with the owner and maybe certain key people around them on their team, strategize and think ahead. Okay, let's play this out. Owner, you're gone for 2 weeks. What do we think is likely to start breaking first?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I might steal that.
And then
Um,
and then
yeah,
let's
if
let's go
right.
there. Let's fix that. What's next? What spider webbing out from there starts to happen? What breaks next? What's that
Yeah.
next layer of breakage look like?
So the way I look at it with them is like if you're adding people and you're adding complexity to your business, but your margins are flat or declining, you're not really scaling. Uh, you're just really making growth more expensive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've not I like that phrase. I've not heard it put that way. You're making growth more expensive.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
remember that. I'm going to steal that if you don't mind.
And I mean, so you can steal anything you want, honey. And but that's Margin erosion is one of the biggest things we see. I will say this. Oftentimes, CEOs come to me with what they think is a problem, and I see it as a symptom of the problem, not the actual problem. And I'll give you an example. Um, a CEO came to me recently. I said, "What do you think you're struggling with?" He said, "I have a leadership problem. Nobody trusts my leaders. They're exhausted. I think several of them are at risk for exit.
Mhm.
They're they're making all the decisions." Well, that was really a symptom of the problem. The problem was really they had shifted their strategy probably 4 or 5 times.
Mhm.
Um, they had done a couple of things in the organization where they were making kind of a big move, but they weren't really telling the whole organization. So it was a little kind of a sneaky thing going on there. Um, they weren't pushing decisions far enough down in the organization, but the leader was a symptom of that. He was the one uh, making half of the decisions. The chief operating officer was making the other half of the decisions, right? And so I said to him, "You have a leadership symptom, but you really don't have a leadership problem. That's not the
Oh, you
root."
you you push back on his
Oh, yeah. I
assertion.
tell people if you're not ready to hear the truth, you probably shouldn't. You should probably go hire somebody else.
Yeah,
Because we like to see problems get solved, and you can't solve a problem that you can't articulate.
yeah.
And it's hard for a CEO. I mean, frankly, you are in your business every moment of the day, and I say you're basically looking at your belly button all day. It's hard to look up and see the landscape that somebody coming in from the outside can see. So it's a little less clear to you when you are so deep in your business all the time.
Yep. And one
And
thing
so
I've
sometimes
noticed,
it takes a little bit of negotiating, um, verbal negotiating for me to get a CEO to see it the way I see it. For the most part, they generally get there because I have no stake in the answer one way or the other, right? So
are
my
you,
my job is to just be a truth teller.
I was just going to put it that way. Are you, let me reword it then. Is part of your job as early as possible to begin to paint a picture for them? Hey, if you don't make these changes, this is what you're likely in for. These people are going to leave, your key people.
Oh,
You are going to continue to
absolutely.
suffer a margin erosion. You are going to
Absolutely. But I
lose.
think when we point the light in the right direction for them, they do see it.
Yep.
You know, it's a comment that we get a lot. I didn't see that until you articulated it that way, or I see that a lot. I get that comment a lot about content that I write on LinkedIn. CEOs will tell me, "I didn't know I had that problem until I saw the way you wrote about that." And then I thought, "Oh crap, that's me. That's what we're
Yep.
going through." Or that's the thing I couldn't put my finger on that we're struggling with.
I do like your LinkedIn posts. I look forward to each one of those, and I see Jane wrote something. Oh, this is going to be good because
Oh,
it's usually specific without naming company names or people, of course, but it's usually really specific and targeted, and there's a great takeaway by the time you finish getting through the post.
thank you. I did have somebody joke with me the other day and they go, "Don't you ever have good news to report?" And I go, "Well, they all end with good news, right?" But I mean,
Yeah,
you have to you have to be really clear about the issue. And then I try to make sure that everybody sees kind of what are the right steps to solve for this problem. But the best way for CEOs is to learn from each other. That's why I have my own podcast, right, where we interview CEOs. It's the best way to learn is to learn from your peers.
and in a way, you're kind of bringing that all those combined perspectives from past clients into each new engagement. You could say, well, in my experience, CEOs in your industry have handled this situation this way, and those experiences keep accumulating. One
Yes,
thing I
and we work across industries. I mean, I, for the most part, work in what I would call really the less sexy industries. Those are the ones I like. Um, but the problems that CEOs run up against when they're scaling an organization tend to fall in very similar buckets, regardless of what industry they're in.
Isn't that true? I've noticed that too. I don't know what the percentage is, 70, 80%. It's probably that high at least of the problems experienced in by one business in one industry are felt in industries of all
Well,
types
that
as
was the
well.
case when I consulted in enterprise level organizations, and it's the case in mid market. I
Yep.
mean, companies go through these growth trajectories, and you see a lot of similar things at particular phases of growth. Hmm.
I try to get founders' attention with valuation estimates, because that's usually my early warning sign, kind of wake up call for them. So using a different tool in a different conversation, I'm trying to get them to see their future differently than what they might have envisioned.
Well, and I have kind of a similar thing. Sometimes with evaluation, most of the time I don't need it. But my point to them is you're either building income or you're building wealth as you scale your company. And what I mean by that is um, because you're taking home a good income in your company right now does not mean that you are creating wealth that will transfer to you upon an exit. Um, and we've seen enough exits go bad to know that EBITDA, for example, is an important number for an exit. It's a metric.
A metric,
It's not
right?
the only thing buyers look at. And a lot of times, Bob, and I think you'll agree with me, it's not even the most important thing. So we're trying to help them to create wealth in their business, whether they ever intend to sell it or not. And I mean, we have clients who have no intention of ever selling their business, but they want to run it as though they were going to sell it because they know
I
that
like
that's
that.
going to create the healthiest business for them.
Yep. I love that.
Hmm.
I tell owners all the time, you may never sell, but an optimized company accomplishes a lot of things. I mean, you can attract more capital at better terms. You can buy up weaker competitors. You can pivot and go into geographies and offer products and services you might not have been able to otherwise. You can hire, in your world, you can hire better people and retain them better
And
and
retain them. Yeah.
on and
Yeah.
on.
You can make yourself less relevant to the business, which is hard on us from an ego perspective,
Yeah.
but absolutely critical. Like you've got to stop being an operator at some point and start being the architect of the business. And that's the
Mm.
growth trajectory that we try to get CEOs on is um, it's a difficult transition. And I'm as much of a control freak as anybody, so I totally get it.
Yep.
But we've got to find a way to step out of the operator role at a particular stage in the growth of the business and become the architect of the business. It's
So
critical to the growth and success of the business.
great segue to my next question, because one thing I've noticed with owners is that they feel in control right up until the moment they don't. And by then, the damage becomes structural. Um, where does that illusion of control break down as companies scale?
Um, it it starts to break down when they start to experience these symptoms that I mentioned. I mean, and sometimes even then, so the scenario that I just shared with you, um, I mean, this particular leader has made several tactical errors that have really cost the business a lot of money. And I said to him, "What do you need from me? What do you need? How do you need to be supported?" And he said, "I think I'm good." And yeah, there was the same silence just now that there was on the call because I thought, there's I don't know if it's a lack of self-awareness, a lack of personal accountability, but every problem's a leadership problem, Bob. So when a leader says to me, man, our business is breaking down in all these areas, but I'm good. I think I think I got it. I think I got things under control. I think to myself, yeah, that's probably why we have the situation in the business that we do. Every problem is a leadership problem. It's a cliche because it's true. I
Yeah.
try to
I
stay
mean,
away from cliches. I have a lot of Janeisms, but I try to stay away from cliches. Sometimes you just can't because they're a cliche because it's reality, right? So yeah.
realistically, you have to point the fingers, so to speak, at the people who write the checks, at the people who make the final call, at the people who are there because they've allowed themselves to be in the midst of all these decisions to be made. So there you go. That's where we have to look to start to fix the
Right. I
issues.
asked them to go through an exercise and tell me, I want you to just for the next 3 days write down every decision that you make.
Oh, I like that.
And then we go back and ask which of these decisions could have been pushed farther down with the right boundaries, with the right decision making criteria, right? How many of these could have and should have been pushed down further in the organization than to you?
And of course, we're talking about delegation and
Well, it's not just delegation. It is delegation. I mean, that's when we talk about roles and responsibilities a lot.
mm,
And where I see people companies miss is I'm not talking about the title and I'm not talking about your activities. Like I care about what your role, what outcomes are you responsible for? So I don't want to know that you're the guy installing and driving the new CRM initiative. I want to know that your responsibility is to reduce onboarding time by 15% in the next 6 months. You see the difference I'm
yeah,
making there?
yeah.
And we tend to, in companies, we tend to measure activities rather than outcomes. So the first thing is clarity around roles and responsibility. Who really owns what? And how are they going to be measured? And
Hmm.
then you ask yourself, how do decisions get made in our organization? Like, what are the boundaries around decisions? And I'll just give you an example because it was recent. Um, we had a client who, well, first off, their salespeople loved to discount as a way of closing deals. So,
I've
first
never
off, we're
seen that
like,
before. I don't know what you're
I
talking about.
have a big sales background, right? And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. So, so the first thing we did is address how they sell as an organization, right? And to really, how do we incent people to really discourage that behavior? The reality is there are going to be situations like that, right? So we created really clear distinctions between what are the decisions a salesperson could make around discounting? When did they have to escalate that conversation? What did that look like? Where did it get escalated to? When did it get escalated to the C suite? And what was the cost to the salesperson for discounting?
And it
So,
could
not
be early in the salesperson's process that they did not clarify what a better outcome for the customer or client looked like. They did not
that's why I
bring,
say we address first how they sell, right?
yeah,
Um, when I was a salesperson, man, I was a bulldog. We worked for a company that would tell you, here's the price, here's the margin, here's your comp. And then as the margin dropped, your comp dropped. And I finally said to estimating, do not even put anything on my desk that's not a full boat. I'm not interested in
Ah,
spending the same amount of time selling for less of a percentage of commission. So don't put that on my desk, right? All salespeople don't feel that way. So we laid out for them, number one, what was the decision you could make before escalation? But number two, what were those decisions going to cost you? Because the company's not going to take a hit and this without the salesperson taking a hit, right? That was our philosophy.
okay.
Um,
Kind of a
but
shared risk
now once you
approach.
have set that decision making criteria in play, very few deals get escalated to the C suite, where before, the vast majority of deals were getting escalated to the C suite for conversations on discounting, right? So
Yep.
once the roles are clear and the responsibilities, and by responsibilities, I don't mean activities, I mean outcomes, right? And then what is the decision matrix that you set in the organization? Things move a lot more smoothly and they move without the CEO having to see every little single thing that's happening in the company.
In a lot of cases, it's not for a lack of effort of, the people below the owner and the C-suite. I mean, these are hardworking teams. Where do you see leadership teams, I guess, confuse activity with actual progress?
All the time. How many meetings have you been in with a client?
Yeah.
Um, all the time. I think the vast majority of meetings are the biggest waste of people resources in a company.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if you think about it, um, if you can't come out of a meeting and know what decisions were made, that meeting was a waste of time. And I serve on a couple of boards. Our board meetings aren't the same as they were when I started on these boards because I said, you have these, you know, minds in the room that you've asked to come and be on your board. So I'm gonna step out here and assume you think these are smart people that can help move the business forward. Why are we spending 3.5 hours out of 4 hours listening to reporting that we could have gotten ahead of time and read and come to you with questions and use the first 45 minutes to answer questions that we have
Yep.
and get on to solving issues that will move the needle in the business? And so that's the experience that I have in most meetings in organizations is we spend a lot of time reporting, not a lot of time deciding, right? Um, I have a client that used to have I'd say, well, what are you going to do about that? She goes, well, I set up a brainstorming meeting. I said, oh my God, what you really just set up is a big waste of everybody's time meeting, not a brainstorming meeting. It's like, come to the meeting with your ideas, sell your ideas like on Shark Tank. Let's force rank the ideas. Let's take the top three. Let's resource against them. Give everybody an action item. In 90 days, we're going to come back and we're going to figure out what the next step is. We're not going to come back in 90 days and say, here's where I hit a roadblock. In the 90 days, you need to solve for that roadblock by getting whoever you need to get, right? In 90 days, we're going to talk about what the next 90 days needs to look like. But we've got to keep making progress and moving things forward. And
Yep.
so, meetings are the biggest place where I think companies confuse activity with progress. And they are the biggest waste of time and energy. Just like there's just nothing that ruins my day more than sitting in a meeting where I'm listening to stuff that I could have read in 20 minutes. And,
It's
you
like a
know, it's,
lot of people in the room are waiting for someone else to take action, waiting for someone else to provide insight, waiting for someone else to, deliver some news. And it just hit me back to your earlier point you made, and that is that we could be talking about a leadership issue, whether the owners in the room, whoever's leading that meeting, whoever's at that point in the room leading the meeting, sounds like the failure is there.
well, you remember I said to you, every problem's a leadership problem?
Yeah.
So you got to ask yourself, is it because we're tolerating these things that are a total waste of time? We just don't know any better. We didn't know there was a better way to do that. Well, I just told you, so now you have no excuse, right? Or I would sit in meetings with one particular client where there was this pattern that happened in the meetings where people would say, "Well, correct me if I'm wrong." Or they'd say, well, I might be wrong about this, or this might be a dumb idea. And I went to the leader and I said, something's really wrong culturally because that sounds like fear to me. It sounds to me like people don't feel safe to be wrong.
Like in a very visible way at some point in the past, and more than once, someone got berated for their opinion.
Well, and this leader was a very kind of punitive
Yeah.
leader, right? And so I said, so here's what happens when you create a culture like that. You just squashed any potential for good ideas
You're
because
not
people
getting,
don't feel
you,
safe.
you've put a really low lid on getting the best out of your people.
Right. So either you need to get out of the room or we need to do some work on creating safety for these people. Um, but something's got to change because everybody's everybody's bunting. Nobody's aiming for a home run.
I like that analogy.
They
Yeah.
don't feel safe, right? I know, and I whipped it out, and it was a sports analogy. It's crazy. I almost shocked myself.
It's one of the reasons I went with the exit teams to name this podcast, my book, the business. A lot of owners have played ball over the years. We use a lot of analogies in sports and winning and losing here. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
and
that that fit in nicely.
I very rarely whip out a sports analogy, but that's the one that came to mind, right?
That's a good one.
We're not going to hit for the fences because we're not safe. And if
So
we make a
expect
mistake,
the same
we're
predictable
not safe.
results. We might get on first, but we are not going any further. Can't.
Right, right. Yeah. So, what are so as you sit in your own meetings, what are the patterns that you see? I mean, that's one of the things I think I get hired for is because I tend to see patterns other people don't see as quickly.
Yeah.
So, as a leader, and you're sitting in these meetings, and you just sit back and you ask yourself, what are the patterns that show up in these meetings? Is it we don't get any good ideas? And why is that? A lack of safety, the wrong people in the room. We're not spending enough time on ideas. We're spending a lot of time on reporting of crap everybody could have already knows or could have read about in a short period of time. Um, what are the patterns that you see happening in your organization? Um, those are usually the places where you've not identified a root cause. You've been putting band-aids on symptoms.
Yeah. Let's talk about where structure fails. I've noticed your LinkedIn posts, especially, you've written about organizational design as a leadership responsibility, not just an HR exercise. I know that's different framing than most people use. Where do most companies get organizational structure wrong as they grow?
Yeah. So I think what you're referring to is I tell CEOs. So I have two things I talk about that I think surprise CEOs. One is around org design, and one is around AI. And the one around org design is organizational design is not an HR activity. It is a C-suite activity, especially in a privately held business. Org design is you designing the future of your business. And so I do say to CEOs, they're like, oh, well, let's get HR in here. And I say, well, they can come, but they can't talk.
Oh,
you know, they can listen and take notes, but they can't talk because it's not
yeah.
an HR. It's not an HR exercise. This is you designing the future of how your business will work as it
Wow.
grows. Now, does that mean that HR has no role? No, HR is oftentimes executing against this org design. They're helping define the roles and responsibilities, in more depth than what we would do in an org design exercise with a C-suite or a CEO.
Yep.
But fundamentally, you're designing the structure of the future of your organization. So where does that break down? Usually 10 million is the first place it breaks down because at 10 million, those informal systems and, you know, things that worked when you were a nimble little startup start to fail you. The next place is right around 40 million is a inflection point where we get a phone call where people go, okay, well, we clearly don't have the right processes or the right handoffs, or our structure doesn't make sense anymore. And I've seen kind of things that are counterintuitive to me in companies that might have worked when they were smaller, but you
Yeah.
get to a point where you go, tell me how project management ended up reporting to sales. Tell me how that happened. And when they tell you the story, you go, oh, I get it. I see how that made sense to you when you were little. Do you see how it doesn't make sense to me anymore that is the case, right? So 40 million is another kind of an inflection point where you go, okay, you know, we need more of a rhythm in our business. We need more of a planning system. Need more of an operational system in our business. A lot of companies that we work with, and some of the um, little venture companies that I volunteer with, um, use EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, which I think is great. It's a thing that gets you a discipline early on. Those
Yep.
aren't and it seems like that's the same as what I've just been talking about, but it's really not, especially as you get bigger. You need to have the right systems and processes. And we always say execute differently, plan differently, think differently. And people go, isn't that in the wrong order? And I'm like, nope, actually not.
Say,
Because
say that again, because I want people to hear that.
execute differently, plan differently, think differently. And what I mean
Okay.
is, we're building the models in the company so you can execute against what you sell, right? Then we look at how do you plan as a CEO, as a leader. When you're a little, nimble startup, you're planning around budget. I have X amount of dollars. This is how I'm going to spend
And
that
you have
money.
to, because you're a startup, and by definition, you haven't been to certain milestones yet.
Exactly. As
Yep.
you get larger, you start to plan around objectives, right? These are our goals for the year.
Yep.
As you grow, we want you to plan around assumptions around the market, assumptions around what you're going to be able to sell,
Building
assumptions
on what we've
around
learned as a company up to that point.
what your competitors are going to do. We
Yep.
call that thermostat, right? The temperature is our revenue. Like we see revenue going up, we see the pipeline filling up. That's a good indicator that things are heating up. The thermostat is really telling you, are we are things going the way we thought they were going to go based on our assumptions? And what are the triggers that tell us we have to do different things in the business, right?
Mhm.
So that's why planning differently comes actually after executing, not before. And then thinking differently is really a function for the CEO. And we've kind of already touched on that. You can't be a $10 million CEO in a $70 million organization.
Yeah.
How do
And
I learn?
often the person who gets the company to that 10 million is not the same leader to get them to the
That's the
70.
companies I ran, right? The leader was like, yeah, I got us as far as I can get us. I'm not the guy to get us to the next place.
Yeah.
And that's fair. You know, a lot of leaders turn over in companies at different epochs in the life of the organization. So, for example, an example I used to somebody the other day about their chief operating officer, I said, what you have right now is a wartime COO. And that was good when you were in wartime. Now you're in peacetime. Do you see how that same person is creating havoc now in the organization? So if you're a wartime CEO and the business is now in peacetime, right? Or
Ah,
some other analogy like that, you have to realize maybe I'm not the person. But I've had CEOs say that and then try to bring in someone to run the business, and they're just not capable yet or ever of letting go of that day to day running of the business. They tend to do what I call um, hand grenade leading. In other words, like, the new person is responsible for the budget and responsible for the strategy and everything. But then the CEO gets shiny object syndrome and they're like, oh no, we got to buy this latest and greatest equipment. We have to have it. Or, oh my God, we need to move into this new market. And they just throw a hand grenade right into the middle of everything.
yep.
While still trying to hold that new person accountable to all those outcomes, which is just not realistic. So,
There's one of two reactions when a hand grenade is thrown into a crowd. It's one is, I got it, I'm going to jump on it. And the vast majority of people run the other way.
yeah, so I've those relationships, they just never work out. And it's because the founder's just not ready
Yeah.
to actually let go or not capable of really letting go. And I get it, man. That's your baby. That's the thing you created. Um, but you are going to handicap your business if you can't grow with the business, if you can't
Yep.
learn to change. Hmm.
Every time. How about we shift a little bit here to value, building value, building a company where value is ready to be handed off
Yeah.
to another owner. So from an exit perspective, I know growth alone doesn't always translate into higher value. We see this all the time. I tell owners it's not for most types of companies, it's not what you make, it's what you take that drives value. It's not that big shiny gross revenue number. It's what's left over for shareholders make versus take. And you see this from the inside. Where do companies that you see where do they unintentionally destroy value while trying to grow?
Yeah, because I just had a PE guy on my podcast, Bob. He vets companies for PE, and I had him on. He's not a CEO, and that's who my guests always are. But I'm like, I'm tired of repeating the same thing to these guys. I want somebody else to say what I tell them all the time to
Yeah.
kind of validate for them. I'm I'm not smoking something. I'm telling you, this is what a buyer is going to look at in your business. So one, and I'm going to financial stuff aside, right?
Yep.
That's the thing most people go to, right?
First. Yep.
What
It's a
are your
great screening
quality of
tool.
earnings? What's your, cash, all that kind of stuff. That's and that's all important, but that's the stuff everybody tells you about. I'm telling you that a customer concentration in one area of your business is a danger. So, is the majority of your business with a half a dozen customers? That's a danger. You know, if you, and I'm sure you say this to your clients all the time, the thing that makes your business most sellable is the least amount of risk to a buyer.
Yep.
So you have to look at all the aspects of your business and say, where have I created risk for a buyer? Customer concentration is one. You have too many big clients, or too much of your percentage of your portfolio is big clients, or they're in a certain industry, or they buy a particular product of your product or service mix.
Hmm.
That puts a new buyer at risk because one client being gone, and I'm sure you've seen what I've seen. I've seen deals die because a client is gone in the middle of
Got
a
wind, or it just
negotiation,
happens to where the client left. Yeah, I've seen
right
that.
in the middle of it, right? So I look at your client, at your customer concentration. Um, I look at your margins on your different
Yep.
offerings. Okay. I look at your what markets you're in, what is your position in those markets,
That's a good one. Yep.
right? I look at things like I have a client who a big part of their model is a distribution model. Their distribution revenue is dropping by 40% in the last 3 years. That tells me that distributors are finding another way to compete against my client. And I'm like, okay, where are we going to replace this revenue?
Yep.
Because they're PE backed, right? So their PE is trying to unload them, within a particular period of time. You're showing a constant loss on a very big part of your business model. Where are we going to go get the rest of that business? Um, I look at leadership succession plan, and are we in a position to retain those leaders without the owner? How am I going to show a buyer that I have a succession plan and I have a comp strategy or a succession strategy that is attractive to these leaders and they're going to want to stay once I'm gone?
Especially if a company's got some age on it, 20, 25, 30 years, what is the C-suite? What do key roles below that level look like in terms of the average age or specific age of employees? Who's likely to leave for,
Yeah. And they're
an
looking at
early.
turnover in your
Yep.
organization, right? Turnover hits your EBITDA.
Oh yeah.
There's a straight line from turnover to your EBITDA, right? So the other thing would be, do you have processes in place in your organization? Really smart buyers look even at things like HR processes. Do you have onboarding processes? I'm not just talking about compliance processes. Do you have you protected yourself against cybersecurity risk, right? Do you have a sales process? They're looking to see how efficiently the business is set up to run.
You use the
Um,
term smart buyer. I use the term sophisticated buyer on a regular basis. It's almost as if today's buyer of the types of company levels that you and I work in, they want that owner's manual handed to them. They want it things documented well, an operation that's flowing smoothly,
yeah,
problems solved. Here's your owner's manual. Here's how to run this business. It doesn't matter who the owner is. Key people might leave by the ones or twos. The owner might leave. We're very likely going to buy them out.
yep.
But here's the book that says keep running this
And
company.
I call that risk mitigation.
Yeah,
I've shown you, I can hand this to you. We've already alluded to founder dependence.
yeah,
If the business relies on you too much, you don't have a business, you have a practice. Okay.
Yep.
So you've got to make yourself irrelevant to the business. The other thing now, what is your strategy around AI?
Mm.
If you don't have one, you're already behind. And I say to clients, AI is not a technology play. Get it the hell out of your tech department. It's not a tech play, it's a strategy play. Um, AI is a
Because be, because I've started thinking this way about AI. I mean, here we are approaching the midpoint of 2026, and not too long from now, it's looking like AI could be have the capabilities of humans. Like it's in a rudimentary form at this point, and we're all still kind of baffled by what it can do. But it at this point, it's great at crunching large amounts of data, spitting out things we haven't thought of, categorized in ways we didn't think to categorize them. We're right around the corner from some true, what they're calling AGI, agentic generative intelligence,
Mhm.
um, where we need to be thinking of AI as actual people and managing them as such. And to your
Uh,
point, that role does not belong up under IT.
oh no. I mean, again, like my HR example, will IT ultimately maybe implement, or manage the yes. But fundamentally, the first place in the organization it belongs is in the C-suite. It's a strategy. And today, good AI needs people. And I'm not talking about give everybody a chat license or a Claude license. I'm talking about you creating kind of the AI brain of your organization, which is a whole nother podcast. But and I write about it a lot. So if you go on my LinkedIn or on our newsletter on LinkedIn, you can kind of see my point of view on that. But um, any smart buyer is going to wonder what's your strategy around AI, and chat licenses is not a strategy. Um, but um, oh, I had a thought, and it might not have been ready to be born yet. But
While you're thinking about that, I've noticed it doesn't matter the industry. These smart buyers, as you put them, sophisticated buyers, as I put it, they're all thinking about how to implement AI in the companies they're buying
right.
right now.
And mid market, my gosh, has the biggest opportunity right now.
Yep.
Enterprise is still bogged down in their cybersecurity and legal departments. 90% of implementations in enterprise have failed. Um, and what we try to do is keep mid market from that same mistake. It's because they're using it wrong. But what the point I was going to make, especially in these kind of industries that we work in, when you're trying to reduce your costs or your SG&A, the vast majority of CEOs head to people cost, right? And they're always cutting people. And I say to them, what you should be doing is looking to AI. Now, I don't ever go to AI with a goal of cutting people. We go to AI with the goal of being strategic, helping decision makers make faster decisions, better decisions, get leadership teams aligned, right? The
Yeah.
reality is we do generally need fewer people at the end of the day, but also, as I just said, AI right now needs people to be good. So, but you want to be efficient in a manufacturing business or a logistics business or an industrial business or a flooring business, and you're not looking at AI, um, I want to say shame on you. It sounds like I'm a mother, but it's like you're
Yeah.
behind, right? Get on it. So, but don't give it to your IT department.
Yeah.
Because what happens, and now we're totally off on a tangent, Bob, but
This is good stuff. No.
companies are just fundamentally siloed, right? It's one of the things that we try to fight against all the time in organizations. And so the the knee jerk of a lot of mid market companies is, oh, well, we use Salesforce or HubSpot, and they have a new AI on their application. So we'll just use the Salesforce AI. And oh, SAP just came out with a new AI that's attached to our ERP system, and we'll just use that. So now you see you're creating, again, you're continuing to silo the business.
Mm.
Whereas our approach, and I don't sell AI, like I said, we're in there with this kind of the strategic part of it. So I'm not trying to sell anybody AI particularly, but we go in and say, let's create the brain of of your business with all the data connected, almost like the head of an octopus, right? And then as client service ties into that brain, they're continuing to feed knowledge into that brain and information. So we're doing this for a client right now with customer service. So let's use that as an example. We're feeding all that information in from customer service. Well, now without even going to customer service, product can go into the brain and go, hey, tell me what products we get the most complaints on. And what are people saying about those products? And so you see, now we're creating insight and we're creating connection with these departments that are just fundamentally siloed, right? There's such an enormous opportunity here. And I think there's just a lot of fear, number one. And number two, a lack of understanding. We constantly start that AI conversation with context. Like, here's what it is, not the way you use it personally, how your organization should be using it,
Should be using it. Yeah.
how, what are the possibilities? And then let's talk about where can it move the needle on your business? Beyond all your people now have great email and their calendars are getting managed and your PowerPoints look great. That's a very kind of capped leverage on
Yep.
AI. It's there's nothing wrong
Like
with it.
like tier one usage of something that's so
Yeah, it's
powerful.
just not going to move the needle. We want you to get the maximum out of that investment and for the long haul. And agentic AI, I'm telling you, you want to reduce your SG&A, there you go, right there.
Yeah.
Is a great way to start. So that was all around that conversation around buyers, but they're asking,
They
I
are.
was just at an M&A conference yesterday and I'm like, they're asking, right? What what do we need to be thinking about with regard to AI?
Need to get ahead of it because, again, sophisticated buyers, they want more problems solved. They want more opportunities taken advantage of before they come along. And the good news is they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah, but don't just buy any, anything that's I mean, that's why I say it's got to be a strategy. Don't just let sales run off and get this AI thing and, some procurement go off and get this other thing. And it needs to be as much of a strategy in your business as anything else.
It's like a whole firm implementation. It needs to be thought about.
Well, it should be thought of as transformation,
Yeah.
right? Not a technology. It's not a technology, in my opinion.
Now,
Take that for what you paid for it. But yeah.
well, hey, here's another baseball analogy. As we round third and start heading toward home, we've got this rapid fire section of each podcast that the audience really seems to
Oh,
like.
geez. Yeah.
All right.
Hit me.
Here we go. First question, most underrated driver of value.
Good operating system.
Good.
We
I
hit
like
on
that.
that. It's not the team, it's not the product you have, it's the system that connects all that, that creates a rhythm in your business. And it's invisible to a lot of owners, and that's why it's underrated.
Good enough. Well said.
First thing that's going to break.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. One thing every CEO should fix this year.
Decision rights.
Oh,
How do
I'll
decisions
give you can have the floor for a little more time. What do you mean by that?
I mean, write down who decides what, and what are the boundaries of how they decide, and get those decisions in your organization pushed down as far as they make sense.
Got it.
Mhm.
I like that one. All right, next one. What's the most expensive problem you see that CEOs don't recognize as a problem?
Meetings where no decisions get made.
You're not a big fan of meetings where no decisions get made.
I am not a big fan of meetings in general. They're not managed well. And meetings that don't end up with an outcome and an owner and a deadline.
Yeah,
Um, if that's not what we're doing, we don't need a meeting. Hmm.
that's good.
You think I
Well,
have
I
a
like
point of
this.
view on that?
Uh,
You
no,
think I
I,
might
I,
have an opinion?
yeah, I agree.
Oh
Let's
my
get
God.
something done here. Let's make sure we spent our hour and a half or half a day as best as it could have been.
Yeah.
Best question a CEO can ask their leadership team this week.
What decision are you waiting me? What decision are you waiting on me to make that you could be making yourself if I gave you the authority?
I knew there was a part two to that question.
Mhm.
That's I like
And
that.
then and then shut up and listen. You're probably going to get some insight from that person as to the place where you are the bottleneck. Yeah.
Right. Most owners listening today, they're probably not in a transaction, but they're building toward one, whether they realize it or not. So, final question here: what's one structural decision that you'd make if you were running a 20 million revenue company that most owners don't make until call say 100 million?
I would I would make a management system. I'd get a management system in place before I needed one because by the time you feel the pain, you already lost margin, an operating system, that
Mm,
we talked about.
yeah.
So, understanding our org design, our roles and responsibilities, what process we need, those decision rights, do it before you feel the pain of not having it. Most
Mm,
people won't do that. That's why I have a job. Um, but that's what you should do. That's what I would say.
yeah.
By the time you've lost margin, you've lost people, you've built habits that are expensive to undo, um, you're cleaning up a mess. That's a thing you could be proactive on, looking forward for your business. That's my 2 cents.
Yep.
Hmm.
No, this has been great. That's a great way to end it. That's well said. We've talked about a lot here. How can folks contact you to learn more about the good work you do?
You could hit our website, janegentry.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Sometimes LinkedIn doesn't populate you by your name. So my actual LinkedIn handle, I don't know if that's what you call it, is Jane M as in Mary Gentry. And no, Mary's not my middle name. And my email, Jane@JaneGentry. There's a pattern there. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for
Notice
people.
that.
So, yeah,
That'll work.
yeah. And I write content regularly. So, and I do try to be very specific about, giving people not just things to think about, but some ways that they can start to solve for things in their own business.
Yeah, like I said, you make some great LinkedIn posts and good content on your site too.
Thank you. Oh, and that's launching a new one actually next week, I think. So, yeah.
Cool.
Hmm.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Exit Teams podcast. A huge thank you to my guest, Jane Gentry, for sharing her expertise and insights. So, if you're interested in understanding how to manage your growing middle market company, I suggest you reach out to Jane and see how she can help. If you're a business owner thinking about your next chapter, now is the time to start building your advisory team. You can learn more in my book, Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price, available on Amazon. And don't forget to visit exitteams.com for free resources, tools, and a master class that can help you prepare for a successful exit. Until next time, build your team, sell smart, and take control of your future.